Eileen explores NYC off the grid.
Welcome to Eileen Explores NYC Off the Grid. Today we are talking about a building in Manhattan that you may walk by if you are in the East Village that you may or may not pay attention to. It is the Merchant's House on East 4th Street, and it is more than 190 years old. You can imagine the history inside of that building. So today I am joined by the museum historian for that building. Welcome, Ann Haddad.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Delighted.
So do people ever say they walk by the Merchant's House and don't notice it just because there's so much architecture in Lower Manhattan that is unique?
Absolutely. We have many visitors from the city, people who live in the neighborhood who come and say, I never realized that this was here or what the significance of this was. But we also have many, many tourists from the country, the world visit us. So it really is getting to be much more well known than it has been.
And it was built in 1832.
Correct.
And a family lived there. And the reason this came to light again recently, there's been some headlines made about a discovery of the Underground Railroad, which I do want to get into. But first, let's just give people the big picture of this house. So built in 1832.
Yes.
Is to look at what, like a wealthier New York City family lived there?
Yes. So it was built in 1832 by Joseph Brewster, who was a wealthy hatter by trade. And he built it with the intent to live there. And he built one right next door that he built on speculation, in other words, with the intent to sell.
Okay.
And 3 years later, in 1835, the house was purchased by a very wealthy hardware merchant whose name was Seabury Treadwell. And Seabury moved his family from their home on Day Street up to 4th Street. And then 5 years later, he had 7 children. And 5 years later, their last child was born, the only one to be born in the house. And her name was Gertrude Treadwell. And Gertrude lived her entire life in the house. She never married. And she died in 1933 at the age of 92 years old.
And so what's unique about the house is you can walk in and it is a picture of what it looked like from what time period?
So the house reflects the life of a wealthy merchant class family who were the prominent wealthy families of the day. From that period, from 1832 to approximately 1865, which was the year that Seabury Treadwell passed away.
And if you're walking through the house, what are some things that are there that, you might not see somewhere else, whether it's is it like a stove or some utensils? Or describe to me what you see as you walk through.
Well, first of all, the house is the prime example in New York City and really the last of its kind of classic Greek Revival architecture that you will ever see in the city. It has these extraordinary double parlors, which are filled with all of the characteristics of Greek Revival architecture. They're absolutely stunning, with cornices, ceiling medallions, all made of very, very fine plaster work, unlike anything that you will ever see anywhere else. And it probably is the last extant example of this very popular style of classical architecture. Very popular from about the mid-1820s to about the 1840s. It was all the rage, classical Greek Revival.
And then in the 1930s, when the last surviving member of the Treadwell family died, how did it become a museum? Did that happen right away, or what went on with the house?
Well, Gertrude died, and the house and its contents were going to be sold by her niece who inherited the house. And along came a distant cousin of Gertrude named George Chapman. And George was a New York City attorney, a history lover, and he came over to see. And when he crossed the threshold, what he saw was a museum. And he, with his own money, his own efforts, turned it into one. 3 years later, it opened as a museum. And it has been opened ever since, aside from a period in the 70s and 80s when it was closed for much needed restoration.
Okay. And as I mentioned earlier, you recently made headlines again with this discovery of an Underground Railroad stop in a dresser.
Correct.
So there's a built-in dresser that's been there.
That's right.
So describe it. You pull out the drawer and...
Yes, so the dresser exists in a little inner hallway between the two bedrooms, between Seabury and his wife Eliza's bedrooms. And it is on the bottom. You have to pull out the bottom drawer of one of the dressers, and there is a hatch. And when you open up the hatch, you see a long passageway that goes right down to the kitchen, the butler's pantry on the ground floor.
Oh,
It's about 2 by 2 in size.
So the passageway, it doesn't go to a basement.
No, it goes, well, it may have.
Okay.
We don't know because there were changes made to the butler's pantry. We're not sure when, but right now it ends at the butler's pantry. But we're not exactly sure how far down it went,
It used to
or
be.
if it did indeed
okay.
go down to the cellar.
So if someone was able to get to the butler's pantry from that by entering the dresser or coming up, how would that have protected someone who was part of the Underground Railroad looking for freedom?
Well, there is, if you go into our backyard, what is now a lovely garden, there is an alleyway behind the garden. And realistically, someone would have been able to go out the back kitchen door into the garden and out via the alleyway without being seen from the front of the house or from 4th Street.
Because what was key when people were trying to find a new life in the North and escape in slavery was that they had to hide so they couldn't be seen walking out the front door.
Absolutely correct.
Okay.
It was a very this is the early days of the Underground Railroad. So there were fugitive slave laws that would, if you were helping someone who was seeking self-emancipation, you could be in trouble, arrested, fined for harboring someone who was escaping from the South. So it was a very clandestine operation. No one was advertising that they were assisting escaped formerly enslaved people.
All right, I want to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to get more into how you know it was part of that and not part of something else, and why the discovery was just made now when it's been there for decades. Okay. We'll be right back with Eileen Explores NYC Off the Grid.
You're watching Eileen Explores NYC Off the Grid.
Welcome back to Eileen Explores NYC Off the Grid. I'm Eileen LaPalmer, and today we are talking about the Merchant's House, which is on East 4th Street in Manhattan, more than 190 years old, literally secrets within its walls. I'm here with Ann Haddad, the museum historian. Thank you. Right before the break, we were talking about the recent discovery of that it was a stop along the Underground Railroad, pulling out a dresser drawer. How do you know that that's what it was now, and why was that not known for decades, even though the house has been there since 1832?
Well, we have known about the existence of the space, and we just were not sure what the purpose of it was. And then 2 years ago, I began doing deep research into Joseph Brewster, who built the house in 1832. And what I discovered, well, we had always known that Joseph Brewster was an evangelical and a temperance man. Mm-hmm. And he became caught up in the social reform movements of the 1820s and the early 1830s. And what I discovered, what we all subsequently discovered deepening our research, is that Joseph actually signed 2 anti-slavery petitions in 1831 and again in 1836. Now, New York City was really an anti-abolition city. So signing a petition like that to me indicates someone that was really willing to risk his business, his safety, his security for that purpose. Then when Joseph, after living for 3 years at the house that is now the Merchant's House, he was asked to go down to Rivington Street and help to form a Presbyterian Reformed church known as the Brainerd Church. And he sold the house to Seabury Treadwell, and he went down and he helped build Brainerd Church. And the most fascinating discovery that we made is that when he was building the church, he stipulated that the church contain a false floor.
Oh, okay.
Now,
another spot on the Underground Railroad,
yes,
potentially.
so we know that Brewster built 2 structures, and both of them contained hidden spaces. Okay. And from that, and because of his activity with abolitionists, he knew a lot of abolitionists from that period, such as the Tappan brothers. He was very involved in causes along with them. So we feel that he must have undoubtedly was involved with this largely through their influence caught up in the anti-slavery movement.
Is there a way to tell from the wood or the age of the wood or any of the structure whether or not it was original to the house?
That's something that we have yet to explore. It does seem to be original. There are other parts of the closet that have been altered over the years, but not this part. This part seems to be original. And we also found wax drippings down at the bottom probably from someone spending time down there with a candle.
Some people online had speculated, could it have been prohibition, a way to smuggle alcohol into the house? That would have been in the 1920s. We're talking about 100 years after the house was built.
Yes, but this space is much, much older. It appears to be original to the house.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about what people sometimes know the house for a little bit, that it's somehow haunted, and you do offer some ghost tours around Halloween. Explain what is the thought about why it could be haunted and the people who have experienced things there.
Well, since the house became a museum that early, there have been reports of strange occurrences in the house. People hearing things, smelling things, seeing figures that have no business being there, that cannot be explained. And that has continued all through these years. Sightings by visitors, staff, volunteers, etc. I suggest, if you're really interested in exploring that aspect of our history, that you come and take a ghost tour, which we offer mainly in October every year, but we also offer throughout the year. So you could learn more about the various instances that occurred.
And a number of the family members died in the home, right? And their funerals were held in the home. That was customary for that type of family in that era.
It absolutely was. We know for a fact that 8 people died in the home. And yes, funerals and wakes were typically held in the front parlor, because this is pre-Civil War, before the advent of the actual funeral parlor that appeared later in the century.
Right. So this house has so much to offer a visitor. And I understand that you are concerned about the future of the home. I mean, it's 190 years old, so keeping it standing, restructuring it. Tell me about the effort there.
Yes. So we have been engaged for about 13 years with a battle with commercial developers who would like to build a large commercial structure right adjacent to the Merchant's House. And if they were given permission to do that, it would, the banging, the hammering, the vibrations would completely destroy all of the very fine, irreplaceable plasterwork in the house. And we would have to close the museum because it would come tumbling down. We would have to store the entire collection off-site at an exorbitant cost to the museum, and we would have to close. And the loss would be irrevocable. I mean, just the materials and history that could never be replaced.
So you can see more about the effort to try to preserve the Merchant's House, as well as all the tours you offer, the ghost tours, the regular tours. Thank you so much, Ann Haddad, for joining us here giving us a little insight into the secrets of the Merchant's House. For now, I'm Eileen LaPalmer, and this is Eileen Explores NYC Off the Grid.